Hey everybody, Mean Joe with Balsa USA. Welcome to the first episode of the Toledo 2020 experience and the third episode of the Balsa USA Shop Time Live series that we're going to have and be continuing on after this point. I want to start off by thanking our guest, Mr. Chad Budreau from the AMA. He is here this morning to talk to us about what we've got going on and what's going on over at the AMA. And we are going to continue on from there. Let me ask a quick question. Are you getting that feedback on your end?
I'm not getting it on my end at all.
Okay. Just want to make sure because I'm getting some weird feedback. Okay. So first of all, this is Chad Budreau. He is the executive director of the Academy of Model Aeronautics in Muncie, Indiana. Thanks for being on, Chad. We really appreciate it.
Oh, appreciate you having me.
So first thing I want to start off is I want to get a little background on yourself. How is it that you got started with the model aviation community?
Sure. So, I think like a lot of us started when we were kids and often with a family member. So my dad flew U-Control or control line. We didn't have a club nearby, so but we had a few acres. So it wasn't enough to fly RC much, but we did U-Control or control line. And he had a Piper Cub. He had a couple models like that. So we got involved that way. We did have a couple RC models. And I remember my brother and I would sometimes pull those out. And we had a helicopter too. And back in the day, as many of you know, those helicopters were not very stable. And I think that had a lifespan of maybe 30 seconds. But we were into model rockets. We were into a lot of things. Model cars. We had a pond that was down the road, so we would do boating. I was big into model trains too. So, and then I think like a lot of people, you get your driver's license and then you go to college and career and it gets put to the side. I probably expedited my entry back into the hobby quicker than a lot of people because of my job. I got an opportunity to work at the AMA 10 years ago. And Jay Smith, who's the editor-in-chief of Model Aviation, took me under his wing and got me back to flying again.
That's perfect. Yeah, see, and that's the same thing that kind of similarly happened to me. I really didn't have much of an RC background. I actually didn't join the AMA and become a full member and start actually RC flying until 2011. So, it's been a short-lived trip for me, but I had the same experience you had as a child. Yeah. We had the U-Control. I had a P40. It was one of the ones that you bought just out of the box. You'd pull it out of the box and it put some gas in it and go fly it, right?
Yeah.
And my experience with that was as I got bored going around in circles, so I would fire it up, get it going, and then just fling it and see how far it would go. So my experience with U-Control didn't last very long, a couple of days. Dad was very disappointed about that, actually. So.
Yeah, as kids, sometimes you do. Like I said, I think back to the helicopter. Yeah, but my dad was actually really good about the U-Control because he would make sure that we were safely away, or he was pretty responsible with that. But that still didn't stop us from doing things kids do.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it didn't last very long for me, and then I had some experience. A buddy of his was really into the model airplanes, and he'd let me put a piece in here, a piece in there, and we really enjoyed it. And then we went out to watch the Maiden, and he actually crashed a thing on Maiden, and my dad was like, "Well, that's it. We're done. We're not doing that. It's too expensive, and it doesn't last very long." I mean, he literally the flight was. I mean, he spent years on this thing, and the flight couldn't have been 2 minutes long. Took off, ran right straight into an oak tree, and that was the end of that.
Yeah. Oh, that still happens today for me. So
exactly.
Things don't change.
Exactly. So one of the reasons why we're doing this is because I felt like it was important for people not to be able to be at Toledo because as we know, with all the social distancing stuff that we've got going on in the world right now, we wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity for people to enjoy at least a little bit of the Toledo experience from their living rooms or, on the iPads or whatever, so that we can keep this whole thing going.
I love it.
Well, I really appreciate that. I know it's been met pretty good. We've almost got 30 live viewers right now. So, very good. We're getting there. So what are some of the things that you guys have got going around over at the AMA?
Oh, wow. This has been Well, I think for just about everyone, 2020 has just been a rough, odd year. Of course, with remote ID, we're now kind of in the holding pattern, at least with our engagement with the FAA on that. And we could talk about that here in a second. Right now, our main focus, of course, is with COVID-19 and how to deal with that. And we're trying to educate club officers and AVPs and leader members on how to slow the spread of COVID-19 and what we could do as a community. So we're looking at a lot of different solutions. So there you have our website up, and at the very top, you'll see the red bar, and that links our members to updates on our latest developments and tips and recommendations. The slider has a few slides. So this one we're looking at now is model aviation. And it's interesting, we're giving a PDF of model aviation and park pilot away for free, and not just one issue, but multiple issues. And the idea is, we know there are park pilot subscribers who may be hungry for extra reading material, or model aviation subscribers who may want some extra issues of park pilot to read. But I think we're in a unique era where, we as a nation, there's only so much binge watching one can do. And I think we're seeing a surge of people wanting to pick up a hobby. So we're encouraging people to give out those PDFs, give it to a friend, give it to a neighbor, give it to a family member who might be interested in dusting off their old model planes or getting into the hobby.
Yes, sir. And then absolutely, this website is a great place to point them to. It won't actually let me click. Oh, here it is. So here's the COVID-19 response. But to Chad's point, this website is full of all kinds of information, especially for the prospective pilots. Not only is AMA our governing body and takes care of all the stuff that we do, but also is a great place for new people to get involved. There's all kinds of different ways to sign up. You can go on, you can enroll, you can check out the programs. There's a lot of different things going on right now. There's grants, there's tag programs. It explains to people where the events are and how they're going to be set up and what you can do, and tells people basically how to get started. One of the things that I find interesting, because it's actually one of my happy places, is now they have the museum section on here too. And you can go on here and take some time to click through some of the videos that they have available and see what's going on at the museum live. I know Claire Austinhausen's doing a real good job of keeping up with what's going on at the museum with all that. Because of the social distancing, the museum obviously not able to be open as it typically would be this time of year. This is a great resource for people to go check out.
And if you poke around in the museum, you can take virtual tours where you can almost walk through the museum virtually. It's pretty slick. And last year we spent a lot of energy, and we're still working on it, of digitizing a lot of our archives and collections. So you can really get a deep dive. And I think right now we're 2,000, 3,000 artifacts. Of course, we have 20,000 artifacts, or 11,000 artifacts. So it'll take a while before we get them all online, but a lot of great stuff, especially with the museum.
Yeah, it's really cool. That's actually one of my happy places. I go there pretty much every time I'm down there. I'll take time and I'll go through the museum. If you've never been, it is really cool, especially for fellow plane nerds like myself. There's all kinds of stuff to get into. If you bring the kids with you, they can stay interacted. There's a simulator area back in the library. There's also over on the other side where the NASA stuff is. There's some interactive exhibits and stuff in there. And of course, don't forget about the museum gift shop. I would encourage anybody that can, while we're off and while we're all kind of isolated, get on the aircraft, or I should say the museum's shop, and buy some items. That helps us and helps AMA keep stuff going, and all those proceeds go to help further what we do as hobbyists. So, don't forget that in your self-isolation periods.
Appreciate the plug, and the stores are open. We're seeing a small uptick in our plan sales too. It's a little slower getting them out, but we're still getting them out every week. So bear with us. It might, maybe you typically get something in 2-3 days. It might take maybe a week, but we're still getting things out, and a lot of good stuff online. One
of the things we're seeing on our end too is not necessarily a processing issue from our end, but the shipping and the mail system has slowed down quite a bit, obviously. And I think there's a lot of correspondence. Plus, you've got all the online dealers and all the online things going on. So there's lots of deliveries going on. I mean, we normally get a pretty good traffic of like the Amazon and the UPS and the FedEx down our road. Now it seems like there's a whole lot more, and that's because people are shopping from home. So just be aware for all of that, for everybody that we're going to have on the Toledo experience, just be aware that, they might experience a little bit of delay, but we're all pretty much still here and able to get you guys what you need. So
yeah. I know I've been shopping more online. It's funny, before this went down, my local hobby shop started doing some curbside service, to comply with my county what the restrictions were there. And I pulled up, made an order, and there were 5 cars in front of me doing the same thing. I think a lot of us were stockpiling supplies, CA and other items.
Right.
Well, if we're going to be locked down, let's but I still don't think I bought enough. So I'm still finding myself buying stuff online.
Awesome. Yeah. And that's one of the things I was talking with a couple of people about yesterday. It's actually, for me, because of my schedule being what it is, it's been, I hate to say it, but it's been a little nice because I'm able to catch up on projects. Obviously I wish it wasn't surrounding the current situation, but I've got a lot of stuff I've been able to get done while I've had my time off. So
yeah, my projects have been more, and they're not challenging projects. So I have a pit and pull. It's a sky camper, and it has, I think, like the Model A engine on it, and it had a hard landing, and some of the struts on the wings are broken. It's balsa. It's easy to fix, and that probably takes, I don't know, 20 minutes to fix. I just haven't got around to doing it. So I have a lot of those little pet projects I've been putting off that I'm finally just getting around to, that just sit on the shelf.
Yeah, I think that's what we're all dealing with now. It's almost kind of like a short little mini early retirement for some of us, because I've still got a full-time job plus all the Balsa USA stuff. So it's kind of nice for me to have some time to be able to get stuff done. Plus, I'm able to spend a lot more time with the family, and it's been good. There's been some good out of it. So
yes,
for sure. I try to always look for the positive and everything. Steve wants us to turn on some Led Zeppelin. I don't think we'll do that during the podcast, but that's funny.
Nice.
So we talked about the museum. So let's see. I noticed a lot of the stuff over here, for those of you that aren't aware, and I'm going to screen share this so you can see. Don't forget the modelaircraft.org YouTube channel. So one of the things that you'll see on here, there's all kinds of information. They're running right now. They're running the Control Your Landing. The first episode of the Control Your Landing is up here. You've got the Stay Connected and Stay Active, and during the quarantine, AMA podcast information is there. If you're looking for a good podcast, I would suggest taking a look or taking a listen to the AMA podcast. Matt Ruddick is doing a great job on that, and has had a lot of special guests here lately. There's all kinds of stuff going on. They're running the iFly AMA or IM AMA series. There's reviews, there's tips, there's tricks, and you can go back many years. There are you could spend days and weeks and months on the AMA YouTube channel going through all the content. There is content dating back. I just can't even tell you how long it goes back.
Yeah,
I haven't reached the end of it yet.
Yeah, our YouTube channel, I think we started 12 years ago, but we have footage from well before that. Jay Gerber, for example, it's 30, 40 years worth of footage, and there's some gold in there. There's a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, and I've tried to get through. I made an attempt to try to make it through everything, and it's just, there's so much information.
Sometimes what I'll do is, when I'm working in the wood shop or working on a model or whatever, sometimes I'll play it in my ear, especially the podcast. They lend itself well to that. It's almost like listening to talk radio.
Right. Yeah. I listen to the podcast a lot. And I actually was speaking to Matt the other day and told him he's the voice in my head while I work on my shop. So that's kind of nice. So yeah, don't forget about that. There's lots of information on there. Very
and
cool
it's
stuff.
Facebook too. We are really tapping into Facebook. And one effort that we recently launched is AMA Hop, and the idea is a lot of people are starting to share tips and what they're doing to enjoy the hobby during this time, and we're encouraging people to share more of that and actually challenge others to do it too. So maybe someone uploads a quick little video, they tag with AMA Hop, and then they maybe tag a friend and say, hey, Tyler Dobbs, what are you doing while you're enjoying the hobby at home? So it's starting to really gain some momentum, and that's fun to see too.
Yeah, if you guys haven't checked out the AMA Hop thing yet, they actually have a link to that on the AMA Facebook page that you can go on there and get on the hop. And it's really kind of cool the way that was set up is they had people tag each other's videos. And as you go through, if you follow it all through, you can go check out a lot of the very active social media sites on YouTube and Facebook by doing that. So you can see what everybody's doing and some of the things that they're doing to stay busy during the time that we all have. Another cool thing that they pointed out on there was the STEM program. If you've got small kids at home, that STEM program information that they just posted the other day, there's a lot of cool projects and things that you can do around the house with the kids. My granddaughter and I did the balloon rocket thing the other day, and she had a blast with it. So it's that kind of stuff to keep people busy is really kind of cool.
And I know you've had Kyle on, and I believe he's going to be on maybe tomorrow. One thing that we're doing is we're trying to compile a lot of this information as well and put it in a central location. So people who are looking for content or tutorials can look in the central database or the central website that says, hey, you want tips on weathering or tips on this topic or LiPo battery maintenance, and just give people a chance to consume that content. Because you're right, it is a little overwhelming when you go through our YouTube or Facebook page. There's just so much.
There's a lot of stuff, which is a good thing. But when you're trying to organize what you want to watch first, it's like a kid in a candy store. It's like,
right?
You go into the hobby shop. It's the same thing. You see all this. It's like information overload. So just pick a topic and stick with it. And I'm telling you, you won't be disappointed with the content that's out there. AMA has done a fantastic job of not only keeping us updated as members, but also as keeping it so that we have stuff that we can actually do. Because we have to realize, and it's funny because I watch the podcast and I'm so used to the set and I'm so used to seeing how it is. Yeah. And you pull it up the other day and Matt and Claire are on there, and it's different, but it's the same because they've taken the time to make it look like it's still a set. So it's a little bit different, and that just kind of shows that we're all dealing with the same thing. So
yeah, and that's been kind of our mantra is we still want to provide the same level of benefits and services. It's different. This is kind of the norm, at least for the next few weeks, maybe month. We don't know. But while we're not in the IAC or in the building, we still want to keep things going.
Right. Exactly the same situation we're all in. So
exactly. And I think that's been probably the most challenging part is there's no clear roadmap. Who knows what next week will look like. But I think what I hear from a lot of people, and we're talking to a lot of other peers and other associations, we're talking to subject matter experts, and what we're seeing on the trends is a lot of optimism that, yeah, things are going to be rough for maybe a couple weeks, maybe a little longer, but things eventually will return back to normal. And I think by the time we get into the real heat of our flying season, things will hopefully, get closer to normal. I don't know if we'll ever get fully back to normal, but
I think there's going to be a lot of changes. I'm seeing some, and I'm not going to get into the really deep into the whole thing because I'm not the subject matter expert, but it looks like there's some positive things that they're working on that are coming around that will make this so it won't be so devastating all over like it is. I know there was a lot of people really disappointed for some of the event cancellations. Yesterday, Joe Nall was actually one of the ones that was canceled. I know that's a big bummer for everybody, but because I'm on this stuff a lot, I've seen that conversation turn towards hope for the Joe Nall in the fall event.
Yes.
So, I mean, I know people are making their plans already for that. So, it's going to be one of those things that we're going to make some adjustments, but I think we're all going to get through it better on the other side. And I think you'll see stuff back to normal very shortly.
I would agree. And the other interesting side effect of this is I think it's creating a bottleneck. I think people are chomping at the bit now more than ever to go to these events. And I think once we get on the other side of this, I think it'll be you'll see a lot of momentum and energy. And even like Toledo, I was disappointed to hear about Toledo, but it makes sense. I understand it. I support the decision. But I think what we're seeing is people realize, once it's gone, they realize, oh, wow, I really missed that. And I bet you next year Toledo is going to be bigger than ever. I feel good about a lot of this.
Yes, I'm actually I'm a little concerned about Nall in the fall being a little crowded. As a vendor, I'm happy to see that, but holy cow, I think that's just going to be huge. Yeah. So that's just my opinion. I think it's going to get crazy.
And that's what we're seeing at AMA too. We are having sanctioned events be postponed. Some are canceled just given, maybe landowners or they can't secure the property, but a lot are just postponing it to later in the fall. And I think that validates that we're seeing a lot of optimism. I think people realize, yes, we will get on the other side of this, and people will be eager to get back out to the flying field.
Yeah, I think that's what we're going to see. Our lives are going to change when this all ends. We're going to be so busy, we're not going to have time to talk to each other on live interviews.
Right?
It's going to get crazy. So while on that subject, I noticed John posted a comment. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name, Miklas. And one of the things he says he's worried about that I know we wanted to talk on today was the future of model aviation with the FAA issues. So just real quick, what's your take on the whole thing?
Right. So while things are, slowing down, the FAA is not. Federal government's always naturally slow, but there's still momentum in those efforts. And there's a lot of issues we're dealing with in addition to remote ID, which I'm sure we may talk about. The one issue is altitude, and we're making progress there. If you recall, in Section 349, there was kind of this line in the sky that was put out there of 400 feet, but Congress did allow for accommodations for community-based organizations like AMA, and we're starting to tap into that and secure the altitudes our clubs are requesting. Some of it's bureaucratic and it takes a lot of work. I attended one about a month ago, in which we sat with the club members and some of the AVPs and EC members, and we sat in a room with about 25 FAA officials. Not all were FAA, some represented the airport, some represented commercial airliners, and we talked about this club saying, hey, this club wants 2,000 feet. What do we need to do to secure that? And we were able to prove that our safety program works. We have risk mitigation in place. To the point where the FAA said, all right, that makes sense. Let's start putting a plan together to get you guys up to 2,000 feet officially. So we're working through that. It's just slow, and it takes time. And to the FAA's credit, they're actually trying to find ways to expedite that because they realize this is going to take forever to go through 2,400 flying sites, and not all went over 400 feet, but there are some that do. So they're looking at ways to expedite that as well. So we're working through it, and so far, the clubs we've worked through that process, they've all received the altitudes they've wanted or needed.
Yeah, and I think the whole virus thing that we're going through might slow that process down a little bit. We were on last night with aerobatic pilot Matt Chapman, and one of the things we talked about was, with the support of all the programs that are out there, we've got the APOA, we've got the EAA, we've got the AMA, and honestly, I think the FAA went, and I hate to say it this way because I'm trying to stay positive about the whole thing, but I think they really approached it from a direction of ignorance, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that they didn't take the time to research stuff and get all their ducks lined up before they started trying to regulate. And I know that's common, and I don't want to get into a big political debate on how the government works, but I think that's how a lot of these types of legislations start out, is they don't really do the research to make it so that they have all the information before they start trying to make calls. And like me and Matt talked about last night, him being also a commercial airline pilot, we understand the need for some type of regulating force. The AMA has been doing their job since 1936, and we have recorded 0 issues with aircraft, with full-scale aircraft. So I think, and I hope that this gives us all an opportunity to take a step back and peek at that. And I hope that the FAA is doing the same thing, and that they're really taking the time to learn what they need to know before they start trying to make regulations that don't make sense for anybody.
And I think what you see in the FAA, and it's true whether you're talking corporate America or a federal agency, is a lot of the boots on the ground with the FAA, a lot of their frontline staff do get it. We've actually buddy boxed with a lot of them. A lot of them are modelers. A lot of them are AMA members even. But sometimes as normal, it comes from the top down, or it comes from a legislator in Congress who pushes this down. And that's often where they may create these mandates that just don't make sense, or are not very practical, or the research just hasn't been done. So fortunately, we're working through it. It's just a frustrating process, because at the end of this, we're essentially saying what we've been saying the whole time. It's like, oh, well, yeah, it looks like AMA is safe, or this club is operating safely, or this is not an issue, to the point now where the FAA is trying to find ways, how can we expedite this? This is just a lot of time and money and energy being spent to say what we've been saying this whole time, that AMA members and our clubs and our safety program works. This is not where the government should be putting their energy towards. We need to be putting it towards other issues and other more pressing areas.
Right. And I actually think they kind of got surprised a little bit with the response that they got back from our members, because I believe we had over 50,000 comments to the NPRM, and that is fantastic. I'm a firm believer that every single person in the AMA should have made a comment, but also keep in mind that there probably were a lot of comments that actually haven't got counted yet because they were mailed in. There's a lot of folks that don't have access to computers and to be able to do that kind of stuff. And if we're honest about ourselves, our membership is aging, and a lot of those guys don't understand how to do the online stuff. So I'm sure there's a lot of stuff still yet to come on that, as far as that. And I'm quite sure they haven't gotten counted everything yet. So,
well, and that's probably, you're right. And we don't really have a firm grasp on how many people have submitted it through fax or hand delivering or mail, but you're right. I know a lot of clubs have, or a lot of members have. So right now the count is right around 53,000 comments, but I suspect it's higher than that.
Yeah, I'm guessing. So one of the questions that we had pop up was from Dan Landis. Dan says, how do clubs apply for higher altitudes?
Good. So right now we're doing it in phases, and the FAA is primarily concerned about controlled airspace. And as a quick crash course, I know Dan knows this, but the airspace is broken into classes, and generically we'll call it uncontrolled and controlled, and it gets more granular than that. Controlled is typically near a towered airport, typically near an urban area. Could be Chicago, but it could also be Muncie, Indiana. And the radius of the controlled airspace depends on the size of the airport. So to give it perspective, there are 2,400 recreational flying sites out there through AMA. About 300, 250 or so are in controlled airspace. So about 10% of our clubs are in controlled airspace. And we reached out to all those clubs first, because that's where the FAA wants to start with. And we asked them, what altitude do you need? And roughly about 50 of them came back and said, we want higher than 400 feet. So that's what we're starting with. We're starting with the 50 in controlled airspace at 1 over 400 feet. And they're one-offs. We're working through those one by one by one. And we're moving through that. I'd like it to go a little faster, but we are moving through that and getting them the altitudes they need. Then we go to uncontrolled. With uncontrolled, right now it's 400 feet is where the FAA is ultimately going to end up with. But we're working on a blanket waiver or exemption that would allow our clubs to go either up to 700 or 1,200 feet. And I know that won't work for all the clubs either. So we'll go through the same process. For those clubs that are soaring clubs or aerobatic or need higher altitudes, we'll work through those clubs similar to uncontrolled air or to controlled airspace, where we'll get them the altitudes they need. But right now it's a one-off. It's as I mentioned, it often requires us sitting in a room with about 25 other officials and the club officers as we work through proving that our mitigations work.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a great explanation. There's going to be a lot of stuff come out of that still, I think. I think we're only in the infancy of it. And like we were talking about last night, if you take a look at that language, it's really kind of patterned after the language that supports like what the EAA and the AOPA does, that it's based on like the home built section. The home built section states that if the aircraft is 51% or more completed by the owner operator, then you're exempt from these regulations. So, for taking a look at it, I don't think it's going to end the hobby. But even if it was implemented as it currently is, and I know none of us like it, and we've got to make some changes. But even if they stepped in and say, "Hey, this is it," there's still going to be avenues for us to enjoy our hobby. One of the things that I discourage people from doing is to jump ship and take the negative aspect of it and say, "Well, I'm just going to sell all my stuff. They're going to mess this up, and I'm not going to be able to do anything." I don't really believe that's true. And from where I sit, I'm seeing over here a lot of comments about the drone deliveries. One of the things that I really don't believe is I don't believe that the drone delivery thing will actually ever come to the fruition that they are trying to get to. I don't see any real way to manage that like what they think they want to. I just don't see that being a real option.
Yeah, and I see a lot of viability issues as well. Just take weather. In addition to payload issues and safety issues of flying things over people's heads, but weather and elements and birds. I do see a lot of viability issues that I don't think have been fully vetted. Where I could see potentially maybe drone delivery could be some one-off use cases. For example, sometimes hospital campuses are very large, or there might be a facility on one side of the city and a facility on the other side, and they need to transfer blood or they need to transfer medicine. I could see some one-off cases like that, but I'm not sure I am confident that this has really been thought through very well. It just doesn't seem very viable that I'm going to have every package delivered to me by a drone. The one solution I heard that I could maybe see is, I live out in the country, so my UPS or FedEx guy or gal has to drive through and weave through a lot of county roads, and often I'm one of the last places they stop at because they'll hit the urban areas, then they'll weave through all the county roads, and that whole process may take hours to hit 2 or 3 homes. Could they pull in them in a central spot, open up the back, and just have the drones go out, a mile and come back? Maybe, but honestly, I think surface autonomous delivery is more viable than air autonomous delivery. There just seems to be a lot of things that need to be worked out, especially with delivery packages, as we're talking about.
Yeah, I have a hard time wrapping my head around them actually being able to do it the way they say they're going to. Just because I know I know just a little bit about how those things work. And I just don't see it being the viability option that they think it is. Like you said, and I'm actually, my other job is I'm a health and safety trainer for General Motors. And so I could see a lot of uses for emergency equipment. I know they're doing a lot of testing with drones taking life rings out to people in the water, or, there's some boats they have out there. And there's also some beaches I believe the beach that's in Long Beach, California, is testing some drones to take defibrillators out to scenes and that type of stuff. But as far as full-on package delivery, I just don't see the viability of that. So I might be way off base, but I don't think so.
Yeah, you never want to say never, but I won't say what company, but I was talking to one, and I said, when I fly, whether it's in my backyard, I don't have a big backyard, or at the flying site, and I think a lot of your viewers would agree, sometimes you have birds that come out, and I said, have you thought about that? And and they just kind of brushed it off. I'm like, sometimes birds get very territorial, or you may be flying accidentally by a nest. And I said, how are you going to work around that? And they brushed it off. Like, oh, that's not an issue. It's like, evidently you haven't flown then.
Right. You haven't done this at all. Right. Exactly. And again, they're approaching it from a direction of not really having all the information. And the other thing was this, and I saw this came up a lot during this conversation initially, was what about birds? They're trying to regulate us, but what about birds? There are 100% more bird strike aviation related incidents than there are model aircraft incidents. So
there are a couple of great articles. So Bard College did a great study on that, bird strikes versus UAS strikes, and it just blew it out of the water. Another one, there's a Popular Science article, and this is a few years ago, but I thought it was great. It said there are more turtle strikes than there are drone strikes.
I bet that's true. I bet there's more deer strikes for sure, right? Because of the deer being on the runways. I guarantee it. Yeah, for sure.
So it's insane.
Awesome. Well, we've been going about a little bit over a half hour now. I know you're busy on your end. I want to make sure you've got a chance to get your stuff done. I want to thank everybody for coming on the live view. And I want to make sure I thank Chad for stopping by and being a guest on the show. We really appreciate all you guys do at the AMA. And if there's anything we can do to help you out, please make sure you let us know. Don't forget to stand by for the 12 o'clock episode. Will be coming up again live soon. We'll be doing this all weekend long. And we look forward to seeing you. So thanks a lot for coming on, Chad. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
And we'll talk to you again soon.
Appreciate
Thank you very much for watching, and happy building.